Anyway, my name is Jason. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Jason. It's good to be here at the mothership. I've never been here before. I've heard of the lore and the tale. I hear there's lots of laugh and pizza and fun and food. So I'd love to come back. It looks a little bit like a museum. Um, Lots of walking around to do and checking things out. But I also know that lots of good stuff starts here, and lots of good stuff goes from this location out into our local community. So it's an honor to be here. I'm going to give you a little bit of my story, my experience, strength, and hope. So there's a couple of people that I've been in this meeting. I have a home group. It's Water's Edge up on the north side of Lake Washington. I've got a sponsor. I've got a couple of sponsees. I've been sober for about 8.5 years. And it's the reason I'd say I'm alive today. It's the reason I'm still married. It's the reason I still, my kids talk to me. It's the reason, I have most everything that I can say that I still have today. So I owe a hell of a lot to this program. But early in life, I'm a Seattle kid. I grew up north of Seattle in Shoreline. The youngest of three sons. I have two older brothers. Both my parents are educators. My dad was a administrator and teacher and coach at the high school that me and my brothers all went to. My brothers were 4 and 6 years older than I was, and to me they were gods. They were these athletes. They dated the cheerleaders. They were the leaders in the school, and all my friends looked up to them, and I certainly tried to emulate them wherever I could. So, my parents didn't drink, they tried to, show us the right way. But I think that kind of had an 180-degree effect on me because it, really sparked my curiosity. Whenever we hosted parties in our neighborhood, we never had alcohol. Whenever we go to other people's parties in the neighborhood, there was all kinds of alcohol. And so I was always curious, like, what is this? Like, what is this all about? And I thought early on, I never thought I was going to drink as a kid. I was focused on my sports. I was very goal oriented. I wanted to be a leader. And then I got to about 8th grade. So it was pretty idyllic going through junior high. And my brother, the extra older brother, who I'm probably best friends with, was having a rough time, and he attempted suicide. And he came home, and from Arizona, he was at Arizona State. He'd come home, having a very, very tough time, and that was like the first sort of traumatic, like really deep hitting sort of moment that I had in my life. And when that happened, I decided I wanted to be the perfect kid. Like I didn't want to be the cause of the trouble that the pain that my parents went through, let alone my own pain. I was mostly worried about my parents. And so I, straightened up my grades. I even did better. I, did even more in sports. I tried to do all the right things. It was just too good for too long. And at that same time, my friends were starting to party or starting to drink and smoke weed. And finally, it got to the point after like 3 years of trying to do this that I succumbed to it. And two of my friends and I, we got a hold of a 2-liter bottle of California Cooler. You guys all remember what that? A 2-liter. And we thought that would be enough for the three of us. So we choked that down, and it was like, this is not enough for the three of us. So we went and tapped on our shoulder. Back on those days, you could shoulder tap and, offer somebody $20, cash to buy you alcohol. And so we all got our own 2-liter bottles of California Cooler. And the next thing I know, well, actually, it was also that day, it was the first day I got really drunk, and the first day that I drove drunk. So like I was knocking it all out with one day as best as I possibly could. So I woke up the next morning in my yard. We were 15 and 16 years old. And that's from that point on, I was kind of off to the races. Like, oh, okay, I get this. This was really fun. And so throughout high school, that was, the last couple of years of high school, that for me was a basis of my socializing, a basis of how I really thought I needed to learn to be social, because I hadn't yet learned to be social and being sober. So I never really learned how to be sober and social at the same time. And so that came later. That came after I got sober again when I was 46. So a lot of that growing up I've had to do since that point of time to learn how to get to know someone, to learn how to have a conversation, to learn how to be brave and spark up a dialogue with someone, that you're not at the bar with. So that was really, really scary to me. And that my partying was, college for me was just in time. Um, I turned drinking into a sport. I went to Washington State, and we tried to drink every way you possibly could, and still try and stay in school. And so I did that. I spent extra time in school that I could have totally avoided, but decided to party my way through it and took some unnecessary courses and didn't do so well in certain courses and had to retake some courses. And anyway, I took the grand tour through college. But I always knew, I always knew I was a hard worker. I always knew that I could get things done if I just put my nose to the grindstone and put my head down and work harder than the next person, that I would be okay. Then I got married to my college sweetheart, and we didn't think we were going to have kids. Both working on our early professions and kind of in technology and digital media, and pretty much didn't decide until we were going to have kids, until my wife decided we were going to have kids. So we had 2 kids, and that was unexpected for me. I was really drinking a lot. There was a lot of drinking in my work with what I did. There was tons of socializing, drinking 5 days a week, which was just fine with me. I was conditioned for that through college. And so it was a lot of drinking and driving, a lot of late nights. And when kids came along, my wife got responsible. And for me, it was an inconvenience. And because I treated it like that, I treated my kids like an inconvenience for the early years. And that's one of my major regrets, is that, I didn't want to come home. I wanted to drink. I didn't want to spend quality time with my kids. I came home and went through the phases of the night, of the days and the afternoons, and man, the weekends were long while they were awake. They had so much energy, I didn't know what to do. And so that was really tough. And it got to the point where drinking at work, I would get a conference room for the entire day. And where I worked, there was alcohol in the refrigerator, in the shelves. So I would just stay in that conference room and work all day. I would pick up a pint of vodka on the way home, and I'd smoke weed. I hit off my vape, and I hit that pint between my legs, and then I would get home, and I was able to sort of sustain what I was doing. And luckily, my kids weren't of the age where they really noticed. I think my daughter did. She's 21 now, but my son had no idea. So they thankfully, they've only known me for the most part in their more formative years as a dad in sobriety who goes to these AA meetings. So that's been useful for me, especially when it comes to managing my 18-year-old son, who's a little bit of a chip off the old block. I feel like I can give him, the advice that my dad never gave me, because my dad never drank. But then again, it's ironic that my dad never drank, because I don't drink now. So I should have listened to his advice in hindsight. Then I hit my bottom, and I'm not going to go into how I hit my bottom, but it was a bad night on Christmas Eve, and everything sort of just came out. I always sort of, like everyone else in this room probably, I partied at my own level, and when we socialized and we hosted, I was partying a night along with them until my level got to be so blaring one night that it just all came crashing down. And long story short, I went to inpatient. I went to detox for a week, and then inpatient for 60 days, and then outpatient. And I think one of the more brilliant moves that were made is that they wouldn't let me go unless I had an outpatient place to go to, somewhere that I could land. And I knew that it's scary leaving rehab because everything's changed. You haven't seen your family. They only saw you in the shape that I left them, which was not good. And so getting back into that would have been super scary without outpatient. And at the same time, it wasn't an AA program, my inpatient, but they let us jump in vans and go to AA meetings. And, the first one I went to was a speakers meeting. It was at a church. It was in Sherman Oaks in Southern California. So everybody was dressed to the nines. There's an actor who was speaking that night, and people looked like they were ready to go out. Like they were ready to go out and have fun. And it was kind of a really festive moment, a really festive meeting, and I was like, wow, this is not the AA that I thought it was. So from very early on, AA gave me an amazing impression, and I knew I could attach myself to it through the outpatient program. When I got home, I started, shopping different AA meetings, and I eventually ended up at Water's Edge. It's in my neighborhood, and lucky for me, it's a hell of a meeting, and I love all the people there. And it's been amazing to see over the years um, how much it has changed, but it doesn't change at the same time. Like the rigors of the way that we perform our meeting, the message still stays the same, and that's a tribute to AA. The people change faces, but there's all the unless they die, people are there for a long, long time. And if they go out, they come back to this place because it's still welcoming. Um, so since I've been sober, it hasn't been easy. Like I've had some of the biggest challenges in my life. In the last 8 years, both of my parents have passed away. My parents lived in the Seattle area. I was the local son. My dad called me when my mom was flown to Harborview. I was working downtown. My mom was flown to Harborview from Mount Vernon, so I walked from work to go, catch my mom coming out in off the helicopter. And I was 8 months sober, 9 months sober, and I was really thinking about drinking. Like this is going to be tough to handle, but I didn't drink. I had my AA meetings. I still went to them. They were always there for me. So my mom ended up passing away from malignant melanoma that had gotten throughout her body and in her brain. And 90 days later, she had passed away. I don't know how I would have handled that if I were still drinking. That would have been a really, really, really tough on my liver. And then my father passed away as well. Well, actually, after my mom passed away, I've got some fair skin, and I've had malignant melanoma on my skin, like 7 or 8 instances of it since my mom passed away. So I always think of that. It doesn't get ever too far away from me. Anyway, my father passed away. I've had some, cancer scares. I've had challenging relationships. Rocky employment. I actually had better employment when I was drinking in a way. It's weird, like with the pandemic and the changes in the Seattle sort of environment when it comes to doing what I do has changed over time. And I haven't had a job for over a year, and I feel like I'm a pretty capable professional, and it's just tough out there for the things that I like to do. And if I add all those things up, I'm like, this kind of sucks. Like this would have been a really hard time for me to survive and thrive. But thanks to this program, I keep coming. Like these are the things that happen around me. I can affect how I feel every day. And as long as I continue to, make myself vulnerable, to hand it over, to be optimistic but real, that enables me to kind of get through the things that challenge me. So uh, I, I'm happy to say that since I got sober, every new person I've met has only known me as a sober person. Like I don't have these old friends that I used to drink with. I don't make new friends in the bar. I make new friends that have meaning. I make new friends that connect with me. I make new friends that will be around for a long time. And it's nice to be discerning when it comes to choosing relationships because um, it's super important to me to keep the people around me that are going to make me a better man, a better husband, and a better dad. And I like to choose carefully. And it's not something that I have a checklist for someone like, well, you're nice, but you're kind of funny looking, or whatever. It's how can I, over the course of a couple of conversations with this person, learn what you know and emulate what you have going for you. So that's really been something for me to sort of thrive on. Um, Being of service. For me, for the first few years of my sobriety, being of service meant participating in my AA meeting. Opening, being the greeter, being a chair, being a secretary, being the opener, being the closer. So that was really my first experience in being someone of service. And then my son became a freshman in high school, and I wanted to kind of look outside the community. I was feeling brave, and I want to look outside the AA community. My son is a really pretty dang good swimmer, a club swimmer, and he got into high school, so there was a high school team, and there was no high school coach, and it didn't sound like they were going to have a season. And so this is a AAA high school, called 4A high school now, so it's big. There's a lot of kids there, and I raised my hand. I said, "Oh, I'll give it a shot." I've never swum a competitive lap in my life. But I knew that I could make it better than what it was. And I could throw myself in there, and I could get the kids to the pool, and I could give them workouts, and I could, take it from, what it was nothing, and add a little bit more. And so that's something that I'm really proud of. My son just graduated high school, so my high school swim coaching days are over. But it's been an amazing process. I have 2 coaches that'll take on the team who are definitely excellent coaches. One coach is an elite swimmer. He'll be able to take the program for the next 10 years. That makes me feel really good about something we started. I think we had about 17 kids 4 years ago, and we ended with 65 kids on our team just this last year. And they were literally swimming feet to hands, like doing laps. So it was really cool to be able to build a program like that. I never would have raised my hand if I was still in my disease. I would have said, fuck that. It would have been way too much in front of my drinking. I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of the kids. I would have been outed somehow. Someone would have smelled alcohol in my breath at some point or another, and I would have, that's why I would never would have raised my hand. So that's a gift to me. Those kids were a gift. I learned so much about myself through learning from these kids. And that whole process of just giving yourself over. So I'm on the hunt for something new outside of the AA community to complement what I'm already doing in the community. So I don't know what that's going to be yet, but I've got some ideas I'd like to take on the next few years or next year. So how am I doing on time, everybody? Seriously?
Yeah.
I was sweating 15 minutes like for the last week. I never thought I had enough content. So, I'll wrap it up. For me, a drink sounds good sometimes. But lucky for me, it doesn't sound good right now. So that for me, when it comes to the actual practical application of going to a store and opening a cooler and pulling something out, that's never happened. I've got too many tools, too many friends, so many people I can call to keep me from doing that. And at the end of the day, life is better. I wish I'd known that before knowing where I ended up, because I could have avoided a lot, but I don't think I'd be the same person I was today without my alcoholism. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.